And I think it's a really timely keynote speaker that we have this afternoon. I was pleased to see the Office of the Coordinator for Reconstruction and Stabilization come up several times this morning, both during the Q&A sessions and during the panels this morning. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jonathan Benton. He's the Deputy Coordinator for Conflict Prevention and Strategic Communications within the Office of the Coordinator for Reconstruction and Stabilization in the Department of State. He joined this office in August of 2007 and has previous assignments with the Department of State as the Deputy Chief of Mission in Dublin, Ireland, the Deputy Director of the European Bureau's Central Asia and Caucasus Office, the Principal Deputy Director of the Office of South Central European Affairs, and the Deputy Unit Chief for Political Military Affairs and External Affairs at the Embassy of Moscow. Mr. Benton has served as well in Oslo and Bucharest, and in the areas of OSCE affairs, the Balkans, arms control and Soviet affairs, international labor relations, congressional relations, counterterrorism, and NATO affairs. He was Special Assistant to the Secretary of State George Shultz from 1984 to 1986, and a Senior Legislative Assistant for U.S. Senator Jim Jeffords from 1994 to 1995. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Jonathan Benton. Thank you.
Thank you. Having just come this summer from 3 years in Dublin, Ireland, I'm very much at home in this venue. So I want to thank the IPOA for the choice of venue, but also for inviting the Office of the Coordinator for Reconstruction and Stabilization of the State Department here to this event. I was here all morning and got to hear all the different references, a few backhanded compliments, nothing totally dismissive of what we do, but I think all of it, rightly questioning whether ultimately we'll be successful and talking about the real scope of what this effort is. I'll try to put some meat on the bones with regard to really what we're all about. And I'll talk for maybe 20 minutes or so and hope maybe we get some questions. My name is Jonathan Benton. I'm the Director of Civilian Readiness and Response in the Coordinator's Office. That means I'm responsible for the Active Response Corps and the Standby Response Corps, both of which I'll discuss in just a minute, as well as training functions for our civilian capacity. Ambassador Herbst had a commitment, that's John Herbst, who is the coordinator, a commitment out of town today, and he regrets not being here himself. As many of you know, the United States has been involved in or contributed significant resources to more than 17 S&R operations since the end of the Cold War. I'll refer generally to S&R operations, and that means, of course, stabilization and reconstruction. You'll note the title of our office is Reconstruction and Stabilization. That's not the beginning or the end of it, but in fact, it's reflective of the nomenclature problem. We can't, DOD says it one way, we say it another. And that's one of the least important problems in integration, but it is reflective, I think, of the problem. According to a study by Ambassador Jim Dobbins, the pace of U.S. military interventions has risen to about 1 every 2 years, while the frequency of new UN peacekeeping missions is up to about 1 every 6 months. We know that a failure of governance and an inability of a state to control its territory and provide for its people will create havens for terrorism, humanitarian disasters, organized crime, weapons proliferation, trafficking, disease, and other threats. In order to effectively address the challenges posed by conflict and failed states, the U.S. government must bring to bear all elements of national power in a unified effort. Only by combining the resources of diplomacy, the military, development assistance, intelligence, and sectoral expertise can we help build the foundations of a sustainable peace. We need look no further than Lebanon, Sudan, Haiti, Iraq, and Afghanistan to see that without a doubt we'll continue to face these crises in the future. Civilian agencies must be ready to better respond to conflict in the near term, and civilian and military parts of government must improve how they work together. And that's exactly why the Coordinator for Reconstruction and Stabilization's office was created in 2004. While we're housed at state, we are in fact an interagency office. And ours is not a small undertaking. Stabilization and reconstruction activities present challenges that not only span but exceed the traditional activities of the federal government. That's why President Bush issued National Security Presidential Directive 44, it was referenced here this morning, or NSPD 44, in December of 2005, right about the same time as the Defense Department released Directive 3000.05 on military support for security, stabilization, transition, and reconstruction. There again, you have two efforts, not exactly the same. We're bridging a lot of the language between the two, but they're both aiming in roughly the same direction. The two documents do complement each other, with the NSPD empowering the Secretary of State to improve, quote, coordination, planning, and implementation for reconstruction and stabilization assistance for foreign states and regions at risk of or in transition from conflict or civil strife. NSPD 44 states that the Secretary of State is responsible for leading and coordinating integrated U.S. efforts to prepare, plan for, and conduct stabilization and reconstruction activities. Depending on the situation, these operations may be conducted with or without U.S. military engagement. Secondly, it tasks the Secretaries of State and Defense to harmonize civilian and military stabilization and reconstruction operations so that civilians are planning with the military from the start. That's key, and that's very new. It lays out the vision for how we build up the capacity of the United States government to ensure a unified effort. Last July, following a tasking from senior policymakers, our office began working with more than 20 agencies, including the Department of State, USAID, DOD, Treasury, Justice, the Director of National Intelligence, Commerce, and Agriculture to implement NSPD 44. DOD participation alone includes representatives from OSD, Joint Staff, Army Corps of Engineers, Department of the Army, the Marine Corps, all the service war colleges, the Joint Forces Command, Special Operations Command, and most all geographic combatant commands. In order to achieve a whole-of-government response to implement NSPD 44, our office has been facilitating a very productive interagency process. We now have an agreed-upon interagency management system, or IMS. Tom Balthasar made reference to this morning, that will be used to address future RNS crises. The IMS is designed to assist policymakers in managing complex S&R engagements by ensuring coordination among all U.S. government players at the strategic, operational, and tactical levels. The system consists of, first, the CRSG, a Country Reconstruction Stabilization Group. This is a Washington-based policy coordination committee with a planning and operations staff. Second, an IPC, an integration planning cell, a civilian planning cell integrated with a relevant geographic combatant command or with coalition and international partners. And thirdly, an advanced civilian team, ACT, which are interagency field teams. Each team is designed to support and augment, not replace, existing structures in Washington at the geographic combatant commands and in the field. So they would work with an embassy, they'd work with a USAID mission, they'd work with other field teams, including, of course, military, but also USAID's DART teams and so on. They wouldn't replace any of those. The system adds value by providing all involved with the tools to ensure unity of effort, which I wouldn't dismiss as impossible, but it is a very, very big job, I agree with that, informed by whole of government planning. Here again, planning is new. It's something we in the State Department typically and traditionally haven't done. In addition to pioneering planning that is integrated with the military and working with USAID, the military, and others to develop a joint conflict assessment system, the Coordinator's Office has created an Active Response Corps, or ARC, a Standby Response Corps, or SRC, and a task force to create a Civilian Reserve Corps, which you heard reference to, which is a CRC. The ARC, the ARC, is meant to be the first civilian response in an RNS crisis.